of a fall of moon dust starting now.
The fall of moon dust is another thing that really interests me massively.
How hard we work for you.
I think it's hard work for them too. Joe, you get a point for speaking as the whistle went, and it's China's turn to start. China, I'd like you to talk for a minute about mutations. Mutations, starting now.
I was going to have my blood pressure checked, and I sat down opposite the most extraordinarily attractive young person who said to me, "Your blood pressure appears to be rather..."
Toby?
Repetition of blood pressure.
Yes,
I was banking on it being so fascinating you'd let that go.
Point to Toby. And Toby has 49 seconds on the subject of mutations, starting now.
Obviously, mutations have formed the basis and the genesis of many a science fiction and fantasy story, as it can imbue the subject with extraordinary powers or an extraordinary...
China.
Repetition of extraordinary.
Repetition of extraordinary.
I know we make it look easy, but believe me.
And that's a point to China, and China has 37 seconds on the subject of mutations, starting now.
Every person in this room is the end result of a long chain of fabulous and wonderful mutations going back over history, aeons, many decades, and...
Sarah?
There was a slight hesitation there, surely.
I think there
I
was.
thought of it as rhythm, but...
Ain't no rap contest, brother.
So, there goes the sisterhood then, eh? Last time I stick up for you, Pinborough. Yeah, Pinborough. Sexist.
You have 25 seconds, starting now.
Mutations are quite an interesting subject, used often in fantasy and especially horror fiction over many repetitions.
China got there first.
Oh, it's like payback, isn't it?
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
China, you have 16 seconds, starting now.
Darwin could be considered the patron saint of mutations. Did anyone else feel a weird kind of time warp there? Everything was... I was doing really well, but then time did this thing. It was very...
It's reflux.
That was almost simultaneous, but I think Toby, just. Okay, Toby, you have 9 seconds. Mutations starting now.
I think perhaps the most popular and famous example of mutations would be the Marvel comic series, The X-Men, with the mutants as led by Professor X.
China?
I think Gojira would have something to say about that. Just wanted to put that out there.
Well, you just had time to give him a point from an incorrect challenge as the whistle
I'm
went.
saying it's deviation from the truth myself. We could even put it to a straw.
Oh, yeah.
We could have Team Gojira, Team X-Men, and then we would know whether I or Toby won. But if you don't want to do that, sexist, that's up to you.
Are you calling me sexist or sexiest?
Yes, I am. Isn't ambiguity a lovely thing?
What happened there was that given to him because we can't decide on subjects that are a matter of opinion whether or not they're a deviation from the truth. That is to say, we are not here to settle the question of who's more popular, Gojira or the X-Men.
That's a really school teachery voice. You should think about it. You know, if it doesn't work out for you with the writing and stuff.
I just want to put it out there that we can't decide between matters of opinion is extraordinarily kind of defeatist thinking. Of course we can. We're geeks, that's what we do. Buffy season 6, Buffy season 7. Yeah. Bring it. Anyway, sorry, yeah.
Anyway, it's the X-Men. So, Toby gets a point for an incorrect challenge and a point for speaking as the whistle went. Thankfully, there are only 2 more subjects left. Oh, that's nice. Okay.
You wanted to be one.
I'm paying attention this time, it's my turn, isn't it? I'm not looking in the corner for the fabled drinks that were supposed to arrive in 15 minutes.
Sarah, I'd like you to talk about Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood. for a minute starting.
Well, it's lucky you didn't
now.
get her one that she could talk about sex with, isn't it? Thank God, that'll go straight to the nursery.
Starting now.
Little Red Riding Hood is one of those fairy tales we are all brought up with. Now, I can't personally remember whether it is the one where there were some bears or whether it's the one where there was a wolf. Either way, I think they were...
Joe,
Surely whether it's the one is repetition.
whether it's the one.
Yeah. Twice you said whether it's, you can remember whether it's the
Yes,
one.
Indeed, two weathers, in effect, is what you're saying.
Two weathers.
Yes, point to Joe for a correct challenge.
Some people pay far too much attention when I'm speaking.
And
Now
Joe
watch me
has
crash and burn.
45 seconds on the subject of Little Red Riding Hood starting now.
Little Red Riding Hood is one of those fairy tales that we are all
Sarah.
You're
introduced.
talking filth. Or was that just how I heard it?
Point to Joe for an incorrect challenge. Joe.
Well, I don't know how you're going to define this, but he went, which I think...
Yes, but it's too late
That
because
was
you
the
already
filthy
interrupted
bit.
and stopped the minute.
And that was just a rhetorical thing that I was doing.
Yeah, like Cato the Elder.
Joe, an incredible survival there, frankly, but there we are. 39 seconds on your part starting now.
Little Red Riding Hood is a tale that's been recently filmed, as I understand it. Charlize Theron plays a role within the film, but that...
China, you buzzed, I'm afraid you can't take it back.
I can. Sarah was before me. No, I was wrong.
Okay, point to Joe for an incorrect challenge, film and filmed. Joe has 29 seconds, starting from now.
A woodcutter plays an important part within the fairy tale. I do believe he is a large, well-muscled gentleman, probably with a hairy chest, a hirsute fellow, if you will. He later kills a wolf, and perhaps there is a strange juxtaposition between the lupine character and that of the man who is responsible for sawing wood within this story. But in any case, he is...
China.
I need a hyphen clarification.
Oh dear.
No, I said point of information. Woodcutter, sawing wood. I don't know.
I think woodcutter's one word.
All right. Okay.
So-
I just wanted to be sure.
So that's an incorrect challenge.
Well
Joe
done,
gets a
Joe.
point.
Nicely done, yeah.
And you have 2 more seconds on the subject of...
Can he tell us more about the woodcutter and his finely honed muscle?
Both hands on the buzzer, Pinder.
In that
Both
2
hands.
seconds.
Both hands.
Sarah, put your hand back on your buzzer.
And when we say buzzer,
Is that you?
It's just a
Listen, if she
torrent
can
of
find
film.
it.
Joe has 2 seconds remaining, starting now.
the grandmother is a character who is always very much...
China.
Repetition of character.
Yes, indeed, a repetition of character.
I'm like a last-minute ninja.
China gets a point for a correct challenge and 1 second, starting now.
So Philip K. Dick goes to a gynecologist.
And China gets a point for speaking as the whistle went. Okay, our last subject. Toby, I would like you to tell us about gritty realism. Gritty realism. For a minute, starting now.
Many people might say that gritty realism has no place in science fiction or fantasy. However, I would disagree. I would think that it...
China.
Some hesitation.
Yeah, hesitation. Point to China for a correct challenge and 52 seconds, starting now.
What interests me is, in a certain sense, the inverse of the question. If fantasy and or science fiction are gritty and realistic, whether realism itself as a genre, as a movement...
Sarah?
There wasn't a question, was there? You said the inverse of the question. There wasn't a question, there was just a subject.
It's kind of implicit, isn't it?
I don't think so. You can't talk about the inverse of the question if no one asks you a flipping
Yes.
question.
I think that's exactly the sort of point they would give it for on the radio show. So yes,
I
point to
thank you,
Sarah
and I take it back everything China ever said about you in the bar before we got on here.
for deviation from the truth. And 39 seconds on the subject of gritty realism, starting now.
Gritty realism is something that happens quite a lot round my way, as we call it where I live. Even in my local cost cutter, we are surrounded by
China just.
Oh, well, I mean, it was a tragedy to get in there. There was a huge, should I or should I, hesitation.
Yes. Point to China for a correct challenge. 29 seconds. Gritty realism starting now.
If one considers grit a collection of small stones, it seems peculiar that that should be the substance that gives its name to a putatively realistic depiction of the world in which we live or might prefer to habitat in the future, or some other alternative version of...
Joe.
Habitat's not a verb.
Indeed it is not.
No, I was talking about the shop. Habitat's very gritty and realistic. If you're into kind of noiry chairs and stuff, it's gritty.
That's deviation from the English language, so Joe gets a point for a correct challenge, and 9 seconds. Gritty realism starting now.
Gritty realism is, I believe, a very important movement within fantasy fiction, but then I would say that wouldn't fly.
Oh no, that was a false challenge. I was going to say repetition of I, but then I thought that really is a small word. It's only got one letter, but I'm just a bit addicted to the little buttons.
So we've got a group of 4 writers. If we stop each other every time any of us says I, we are going nowhere.
Joe, you get a point for an incorrect challenge, and you have 1 second of gritty realism starting now.
Magic swords, wizards, vampires...
Stop! I don't think China got there in time. Indeed, Joe gets another point for speaking as the whistle went. And because nature is merciful, that's all we've got time for tonight. I would like to thank our 4 wonderful panellists, Toby, Sarah, China and Joe. Thank you. And thanks very much, Dave, who's been wonderful with the
And thank you to our question master, Mr. Paul Cornell, of course.
I've got to say, our wonderful tech people here who provided these flashing lights, but also, which saved us from a wonderful fallback position, because China Miable bought me a set of buzzers. It's very nice of him. Okay.
And when he says buzzers...
Yeah, you don't want to see what's in this box. Anyway, in joint 3rd place, with 12
That's
points...
last. I consider that last.
With 12 points, both Sarah and Toby. In 2nd place, with 13 points, China. And so tonight's winner with a full 20 points, Joe Abercrombie.
Peace in our time. Peace in our time.
Thank you, everybody, and good night from just a minute. Thank you.